Hello everyone and welcome back to my YouTube channel. It's so good to have you here. If you caught my recent video, I was chatting about the 10 reasons why you shouldn't move to Perth. Of course, that is not my true belief. I feel like you should move to Perth if it's something that's been on your mood board and you're just wondering like, what is it actually like to live in Western Australia? What are some of the pros of moving? How have other people found it? As much as the internet's a lot of strangers dishing out advice, I must say that a lot of the time it's actually very useful to have the average person's experience of moving to a new country or to a new state if you're moving from over east, and how they've really found moving and living in a new space. So if you're in that mindset of should I do it, hopefully I can convince you with this video. If you're new here, my name is Megs. It's so good to meet you. Normally I make digital marketing videos, but of late I've been doing a broad range of topics, including a few about Australia. So a bit of backstory: I moved in January of 2024. It's now April, so I feel like I'm kind of in a space where I can comment, having been here for a little bit, and I've been to Perth 3 times. So I spent a month here in 2022, I think. 2023, I also spent a month, and then 2024, I ended up moving with my husband, and we now live in the eastern suburbs of central Perth, and we absolutely love it here. We stay in a 2-bedroom. It's absolutely amazing. We somehow managed to get a rental in the middle of a rental crisis. So if you're looking for tips, do leave me comments down below, and I can try and help you if you're kind of looking at this new chapter upcoming and that's one of your concerns. But I'm going to jump into all the pros that we found since having moved here. Okay, so number one, and excuse the dad joke, it's the quality of life. So Australia is very well known for having a good minimum income as well as like a good baseline for the average Australian or the average person living in Australia. On the screen, I'm going to put the average South African salary, and then I'm going to put the average Perth person's salary. Now, of course, it is going to depend hugely in terms of which industry you're in and experience and so forth, but I'm really talking about the average here. I've mentioned it before, Australia is a very egalitarian society, so of course it still has its flaws, but overall, the average person does tend to live a good quality of life and quality. It's really endearing to see that middle class people can still have a great existence. You know, I've been watching commentary videos about why the American dream is dead by Shelby Church, like just brilliant stuff in terms of like how the cost of living crisis is affecting us all. By the way, in Aussie slang, it's called the Cozzy Lives crisis. So that's a good one to drop into conversation. It's definitely apparent here too, but I'd say if you're earning the average salary and you are living conservatively, you're still going to have a good life. So we are both kind of, I'd say, in the mid or prime of our careers, and we both are professionals, working professionals. So of course it's going to differ from person to person, but to put it in perspective, I have a 4-year marketing qualification. My husband's an architect, so I'd say pretty average professions. We have found that it's definitely more buying power that you have here in terms of living a good lifestyle. And yes, of course, it's not going to be extravagant, and the luxuries in life are very expensive in Australia, but overall, it's really good to be an Australian, I would say. Number 2 has been the people for us. I must say that I've had a soft spot for Australians ever since I visited the first time. Even the bus drivers will typically be in a good mood, smile at you. Sometimes they sing, which is hysterical. And just things that sort of brighten your day. People will give up their seats on the bus for you if they can see you carrying stuff, and just things that really, it's like random acts of kindness that I feel go such a long way. I feel like in South Africa, we're well known for being friendly, but I'd say with the crime rate being what it is, oftentimes you find people not really engaging. Like, I didn't know who my neighbors were in South Africa, and that's kind of the norm these days, where people very much keep to themselves. And I feel like Australia, because it's more of that like egalitarian middle class lifestyle, you greet your neighbors every day, and it just feels like a wholesome existence to be here. So we've really loved that about Perth. The next thing is its natural beauty. So Australia is amazing in terms of all of its beaches and just how clean the city is. So even the cityscapes I feel are a bit less grunge than what they are in other parts of the world. So I lived in Switzerland and Germany when I was growing up, and yes, of course, beautiful, beautiful places to stay. But I did find like Germany, for example, is definitely got like a grunge factor, Hamburg in the north specifically. And of course, there's suburbs in Australia and in Perth, which are a little bit more grunge. But on the whole, people make a really concerted effort to have a beautiful neighborhood and community. So to give you an example, our municipality, which is called the City of Vincent, we have recycling bins called FOGO, which is organic waste. And then on the Facebook group, it'll be like, okay, cool, the organic waste has been made into compost and you can come collect. Like those are the sorts of things that you just don't find in South Africa. And I find it very, again, it's a small gesture, but I feel like it's something that really makes you proud to live in a beautiful place and you feel like it's well taken care of. Graffiti definitely does seem to be something that City of Perth battle with, but you'll see no sooner has the graffiti gone up than the graffiti will be tried to take down. So people definitely are making an effort to try and keep the city beautiful, and there's a big push at the moment for Perth to be the city of lights. So that's definitely the marketing ploy that the city have undertaken. And so you'll often find there's free events like free fireworks and that. So not only is the city itself very beautiful and the beaches are really beautiful, but there's also a push from local government for families and that to enjoy free events and yeah, just take advantage of all the city has to offer. Number 4 is the public transport. So I absolutely love Perth's public transport system. I've spoken about it before. In my Why Not to Move to Perth video, I did mention that weekends it's a little bit trickier because if you're wanting to go and do anything a little bit outside of the city, it starts to become less feasible to catch public transport. But in terms of Monday to Friday, it's such a joyous thing to hop on a bus, hop on a train, not have to drive, get into your car, get stuck in traffic, anything like that. So it's given me a lot more time. I'm actually busy reading the most amazing book. If you guys haven't got your hands on this, I would seriously recommend it. I have been obsessed with Ali Abdaal for the longest time, and now he's released a book called Feel Good Productivity. So just to be able to read your book on the bus is amazing to me, and basically be able to put your feet up while someone takes you somewhere nice. Also, something to mention is on Sunday, the public transport is free, which also, again, blows my mind, and there are free central area transit buses, which for short are called CAT buses, and that means that you can get around the inner city for free as well. So just a lot of infrastructure to try and make life just that little bit easier. My next point is around the tech. So I'm going to sound like so backwards, but I will say that tech is very expensive in South Africa. So for someone like me who loves YouTube and making videos, things like cameras and computers and all that sort of thing are very expensive. But when I moved to Australia, I was first in line to buy an iPhone. I want to say that it was something as extreme as like 5,000 Rand cheaper to buy it in Perth as opposed to buying it in South Africa. So that was a huge pro for me. Even just things like Rode microphones, I bought these off Amazon the previous time that I'd come to Perth. I just really appreciate that it is a consumerist society and people do have spending power. So it's very accessible to be able to order things off of Amazon, which is foreign for people like me who come from a country that, you know, Amazon hasn't even really entered the market yet. So I'd say that although I did criticize the clothes shopping, I will say that electronics and tech, there's a lot of cool tech stores here. Like I love JB Hi-Fi. I could spend all of my money there. And just being able to know that you feel more part of like the American trends in terms of when the Apple iPhones come out, and for that to actually be accessible on the average salary. The next thing I want to mention is I was expecting a pretty homogenous society when I moved to Perth, but I will say that there are a lot of expats here. So when I visited Dubai, I remember there was a stat about like how 1 in 9 people are actually from the UAE, where here, of course, the stat wouldn't be anything as impressive, but if you walk into the average meeting, there will be someone who is not Australian, and it's a great talking point. Like a lot of people, when they hear that you're South African, want to tell you about the biltong stores in Perth. There are so many biltong stores here and that sort of thing. So I'd say it's less homogenous maybe than what you're expecting. There definitely seems to be a big Asian influence in terms of cuisine, which is really cool. So like Northbridge, although that's kind of regarded as like the clubbing neighborhood, I've noticed there's like a lot of incredible looking Asian spots where you can go and grab like affordable Asian food. And so it's just not that like very stock standard Australian society that you may be expecting. I'm sure it might be even more diverse over east because that's like Melbourne and Sydney are more known as like transient sort of cities. But certainly I'd say that Perth has opened my eyes in terms of just how many different nationalities are living here. And there's a huge influx of people at the moment because I guess COVID kind of made us all reevaluate our life decisions and where we want to live. And now that the borders have reopened, obviously a lot of people have been putting in their applications for that. The next thing I wanted to mention was cafe culture. So I'm sure the Melbourners are rolling their eyes, but I really do think the coffee in Australia is amazing. And of course, Perth is no different. I mean, there's just so many cute cafes when you walk to work after catching the bus and you just see the office workers kind of like sprawled out on the street drinking a flat white or a long black or whatever it is that you Australians call the coffee here. But it really is amazing in terms of being able to romanticize the smaller aspects of life because, as I mentioned, of course, other things can be quite expensive, but I feel like people will make an exception for still getting their daily coffee. What is encouraging is a lot of people do bring like sippy cups or flasks, Stanley flasks, whatever. And so that's pretty cool as well because not only are they indulging in their daily coffee, they are also helping to reduce single-use plastics and all those sorts of things. So very cool. I also love how active the city is. So there are endless amounts of places to cycle. We can cycle easily to South Perth, which is kind of like a promenade. It's absolutely stunning. We can cycle to the Matagara Bridge. We can cycle to Burswood, which is beautiful. There's just so much accessible within cycling distance, and it's so rife to take advantage of. So it also helps with the budgeting because I feel like there's a lot to do that doesn't necessarily cost very much money. But yeah, it's a very active sort of place. We also have a lot of gyms here. If I look at CBD Perth and kind of just look on Google Maps for gyms, you will find every kind of gym. The one thing that is a little bit lacking, I should have put this in my cons video, but there's no paddle there's no real paddle community here. So paddle, if you're not familiar, is like a cross between, I guess, squash and tennis. I know that there's one club in Floriette, but I was pretty disappointed. I thought that paddle was like taking the world by storm. I'm a racket sports lover, so that was one thing that I did notice. But every other kind of gym, like CrossFit or boxing or Pilates or anything like that, is in abundance. Yeah. I actually recently watched a video about why Australians hate apartments, and it's quite interesting that Australians do tend to favor the more sort of like face brick house or townhouse. And I will say I also find that to be a pro. So instead of everyone being super centralized in the city, I feel like people have spread out, which of course, you know, urban sprawl, I get that it's not always that feasible to have a biggish house, but I'd say the average person has a decently sized home. A lot of the vlogs that I watch of people in Melbourne and Sydney, like, of course, the cost of living and the rental crisis means that people are living in very, very confined spaces. We, for what we are paying, I feel have like a good square meterage in terms of a 2-bedroom flat. And it's even got a laundry room, which is really cool. So I think maybe my next video I can share with you guys like more of the floor plan and what $650 will get you per week in Australia. But I will say that it wasn't as cramped as what I was expecting. I was expecting like a Parisian sort of apartment. And the more that we looked at it, the more we realized like it actually wasn't necessary to live totally in a studio, but it would depend, of course, on where you're working and such. But I work pretty centrally. It's easy for me to get in and out of town. even without being in the city center. And even when I was staying with my brother south of the river, I didn't find it difficult at all to get into town. So if you do favor space, you can definitely find bigger places which are better value for money south of the river and north of the river. There's a lot of dispute, which you'll come to learn about Perth, whether south of the river or north of the river is better. It's an absolute crock of shit, in my opinion. There are beautiful places both north and south of the river. It's not really a divide, apart from, I guess, if you're looking to drive into work. Most of the time you're catching the train or the bus, and you're less impacted by traffic. So I'd say don't get too hung up on the north versus south thing. Also, because of the rental crisis, it's not really going to pay to be super fussy in terms of which exact neighborhood. But what I will say is, if you have a general gist of the sort of lifestyle you're after, you're going to be able to find that depending on which suburb or neighborhood you choose. If you want more information that is very specific, please do leave it in the comments below, and I can definitely help out in terms of which suburbs I think might be a good fit for you. But overall, I'd say most of the suburbs we looked at were really nice. There weren't any that we just like felt repulsed by. It was more the standard of the home itself as opposed to the neighborhood that we didn't like. I must admit, I think I've kind of lost track in terms of the pros of living in Perth, but they are bountiful. I absolutely love it here. It's been a very hard adjustment, of course, moving away from friends and family. But in terms of Perth itself, if you just look at it in a microcosm, it's an amazing place to be. And there's a lot more young people than I think we give credit for. I was worried that it was only families or only sort of like older folk. It's not at all. Like, there is a younger scene if that's what you're after. It just seems to have something for everyone. I think you can find your tribe like you can in most cities. And I would really love it if you did consider Perth, if it's something that you have sort of been toying with. It really is an amazing spot, and I can't adequately surmise it into this video. Hopefully some of the B-roll helps sell it as well, just in terms of just how beautiful and clean the city really is. But if you have any questions, like I say, please pop them in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe, and I can't wait to see you in the next video so we can keep on doing this shit better, or keep on chatting about Australia. I'll see you guys soon. Bye.
Mountain tops and seas below, I know we'll always find a way home.